Welcome back to my channel, The Coin Spot. Today is best top 4 coins, one you want to miss. We're diving into the world of United States coins. Please don't skip this video, so let's get it started. Top 1. The 1962 Elizabeth II halfpenny coin, including its historical context, design features, mintage information, and collector value. This will be presented in longer, descriptive paragraphs to give you an in-depth understanding. Historical context of the 1962 Elizabeth II halfpenny. The 1962 Elizabeth II halfpenny is a pre-decimal British coin that belonged to the currency system used in the United Kingdom before the decimalisation of the British pound in 1971. At that time, the pound was divided into 240 pence, and the halfpenny was one of the smallest denominations in circulation. The 1962 halfpenny coin was issued during the early reign of Queen Elizabeth II, who ascended to the throne in 1952 following the death of her father, King George VI. The coin belongs to the second series of Elizabethan halfpennies, and it was one of the last few issues before the coin's eventual demonetization in 1971. The period during which this coin circulated saw vast cultural and economic change in post-war Britain, including the beginning of the swinging 60s, the decline of the British Empire, and modernization of the country's infrastructure and society. The halfpenny, although a very small denomination in terms of value, played a vital role in everyday transactions. It was commonly used for buying small items like newspapers, matches, sweets, and even bus fares. Its production was necessary for the efficient functioning of the economy, particularly for transactions involving small amounts of money. However, by the 1960s, inflation and rising prices meant that the buying power of the halfpenny was rapidly diminishing, leading to decreased public reliance on the coin and a growing sentiment that it was becoming obsolete. Obverse design. Portrait of Queen Elizabeth II. The obverse, front, of the 1962 halfpenny features a right-facing portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, which was designed by artist Mary Gillick. This effigy was used on coins from 1953 until the mid-1960s and portrays a youthful and idealized image of the Queen, crowned with a laurel wreath rather than a royal crown, which gives it a classical Roman appearance. This depiction was meant to symbolize continuity and dignity, and it represented a fresh start for the monarchy following the turmoil of the Second World War and the early death of the previous monarch. The legend around the obverse reads Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina F. Laughing Face, which stands for Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith. This inscription is a traditional style used on British coinage for centuries, emphasizing the sovereign's divine right and her role as the head of the Church of England. The portrait is finely detailed and became iconic in British numismatics, appearing on many coins during the early years of the Queen's reign. Reverse design. The Golden Hind. The reverse, back, of the 1962 halfpenny features a detailed image of the Golden Hind, the famous English galleon captained by Sir Francis Drake during his circumnavigation of the globe from 1577 to 1580. The choice of this ship as the reverse design connects the coin to Britain's maritime heritage and symbolizes exploration, naval strength, and the adventurous spirit that defined much of Britain's imperial era. The design was created by Thomas Humphrey Paget, a prolific coin designer who worked on many British coins during the mid-20th century. Above the ship is the inscription halfpenny, and the date 1962 appears below the ship. The ship is depicted in full sail, showing remarkable attention to detail, including rigging and wave patterns, which makes this coin one of the more visually interesting designs in the British pre-decimal series. The reverse design had been in use since 1937 during the reign of King George VI, and continued until the coin was withdrawn from circulation. Mintage, composition, and specifications. The 1962 Elizabeth II halfpenny was struck in very large numbers to meet demand, with a total mintage of 78,624,000 coins. This high mintage means the coin is relatively common today, especially in circulated condition. It was minted at the Royal Mint, located at Tower Hill in London at the time. The coin was made from bronze, consisting of 95.5% copper, 3% tin, and 1.5% zinc. It weighs approximately 5.67 grams, with a diameter of 25.48 millimeters and a thickness of about 1.6 millimeters. The edge of the coin is plain, meaning it has no reading or inscription. Collector value and rarity. Because of its high mintage, the 1962 halfpenny is not considered rare in numismatic terms. Most examples found today are in circulated condition and have low monetary value, typically ranging from a few pence to around £1 depending on wear. However, uncirculated or mint condition coins, graded as BU brilliant uncirculated, can fetch higher prices among collectors, generally between £1 and 50 pence to £5 or more depending on quality and market demand. Coins in proof or presentation sets, which were specially struck for collectors and not for circulation, are significantly rarer and command a premium despite its low face and collector value. The 1962 halfpenny holds historical significance. It marks the continuation of British pre-decimal coinage, which has since become a nostalgic relic of Britain's monetary past. As such, it is commonly sought after by beginner collectors, history enthusiasts, and anyone interested in British royal memorabilia. Withdrawal and legacy. The halfpenny was withdrawn from circulation as part of the decimalization process that took place on February 15, 1971, known as Decimal Day. This transition simplified British currency by making £1 equal to 100 new pence. The old halfpenny, 1/2d, had no equivalent in the new decimal system, making it obsolete. However, a different decimal halfpenny, worth 0.005 of a pound, was introduced later but also phased out due to its unpopularity today. The 1962 Elizabeth II halfpenny represents a tangible piece of British monetary and cultural history. It offers insight into an era of transition, from empire to modernity, from classical coinage to decimal systems. Its maritime design and classical portraiture evoke national pride, royal tradition, and the global influence Britain once held. Though no longer in use, these coins are preserved in private collections, museums, and educational settings as symbols of a bygone age. Top 2. The 1967 Elizabeth II halfpenny coin, covering its historical context, design features, mintage, specifications, numismatic value, and legacy. This has been written in longer paragraphs to provide a deeper, more thorough understanding historical context of the 1967 Elizabeth II halfpenny. The 1967 Elizabeth II halfpenny represents one of the final chapters in the long history of pre-decimal British coinage, a monetary system that had existed for centuries. Prior to decimalization in 1971, the British pound was divided into 20 shillings, and each shilling into 12 pence, totaling 240 pence to the pound. The halfpenny, 1/2d, also referred to colloquially as the halfpenny, was a small value coin but served a critical purpose in everyday commerce. Issued during the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, the 1967 halfpenny reflects not only the coinage traditions of Britain but also a nation on the brink of major economic and cultural transformation. The year 1967 itself was a period of significant change in British society. The swinging 60s were in full motion, a time marked by youth culture, the rise of British pop music, like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and a more modern, progressive outlook across the country. At the same time, there were signs of an aging monetary system. Inflation was beginning to eat away at the buying power of the smaller denominations. Coins like the halfpenny were becoming increasingly impractical in daily use, as more items rose in price and no longer could be purchased for mere fractions of a penny. Despite this, millions of halfpennies were minted in 1967. In fact, it was the last year the halfpenny was struck for general circulation, making it historically significant as the final standard issue coin of its type before decimalization. Obverse design. Queen Elizabeth II portrait by Mary Gillick. The obverse, front side, of the 1967 halfpenny features the first portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by the renowned sculptor Mary Gillick. This effigy was used from the beginning of Elizabeth's reign in 1953 up until the mid-1960s, after which it was replaced by more mature likenesses. Gillick's portrait is distinctive and elegant. It portrays a young queen uncrowned, facing to the right, and adorned with a laurel wreath. This classical, almost Romanesque design was intentionally selected to represent a new era of hope and continuity following the post-war years. Surrounding the portrait is the Latin legend Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina FD, an abbreviation of Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith. This traditional inscription emphasized the Queen's divine right to rule and her constitutional role as the head of the Church of England. The absence of a crown in the portrait is notable, as it marked a departure from the usual regal imagery and was seen as more democratic and accessible. This coin thus carries with it the ideals of a young monarch and a new generation of leadership. Reverse design. The Golden Hind. The reverse, backside, of the 1967 halfpenny showcases one of the most iconic designs in British numismatics. The Golden Hind, the ship famously captained by Sir Francis Drake, who circumnavigated the globe between 1577 and 1580. This design, which first appeared on the halfpenny in 1937, was created by Thomas Humphrey Paget, a prolific coin designer known for both royal and naval imagery. The Golden Hind was chosen not just for its historical importance, but for what it represented: the spirit of exploration, adventure, trade, and maritime supremacy, all values closely tied to Britain's self-image during its imperial zenith. The ship is depicted in full sight, cutting through stylized waves, with detailed rigging, masts, and sails. Above the ship appears the denomination halfpenny, and beneath it the date 1967. The design is rich in detail, giving it a dynamic and noble presence even on such a small coin. For generations of British citizens, this imagery was instantly recognizable and deeply symbolic, evoking pride in the nation's naval heritage and its historical reach across the seas. Specifications and composition. The 1967 halfpenny was minted at the Royal Mint, which at the time was still based in London, prior to its move to Llantrisant, Wales, in the early 1970s. The coin was struck in bronze, a durable alloy consisting of 95.5% copper, 3% tin, and 1.5% zinc, and shares the same composition as most other halfpennies from the mid-20th century. Here are the full physical specifications of the coin. Weight: 5.67 grams diameter, 25.48 millimeters thickness, approximately 1.6 millimeters edge, plain. Shape: round. Orientation: metal alignment, the obverse and reverse are aligned the same way. This makes it a relatively large coin for such a small denomination, especially when compared to modern coins. The size was originally intended to ensure that the coin was distinguishable by touch, important in an era where many everyday transactions were done by hand and by memory. Mintage and circulation: the mintage of the 1967 halfpenny was extremely high. Over 146,491,000 coins were produced for circulation. Additionally, even more were struck in 1970 with the 1967 date for inclusion in souvenir-proof sets, as 1967 was the last date issued before decimalization. These coins continued to circulate widely in the late 1960s and early 1970s, even after production had ceased because of the high volume minted. The 1967 halfpenny is very common and can be found in large quantities, especially in old coin collections, drawers, or among inherited items. Many people held onto these coins after decimalization in 1971 as souvenirs or as part of personal savings, and they still occasionally turn up today. Numismatic value and collectability: from a collector's standpoint, the 1967 halfpenny is not rare, and in most cases, it holds only modest value. In circulated condition, these coins are typically worth between 5 pence and 30 pence depending on where. However, in uncirculated or brilliant uncirculated condition, the coin can fetch a little more, typically between 50 pence and £1 and 50 pence. Proof versions from the 1970 sets may sell for slightly more, especially if they are housed in original presentation packaging. That said, its appeal is not always in its monetary value. The 1967 halfpenny holds nostalgic and educational value, and it remains a favorite among beginners, school collections, and anyone interested in British history or royal coinage. It is also a popular item for coin-based crafts and jewelry because of its attractive ship design and vintage feel. Withdrawal and decimalization. The 1967 halfpenny was one of the last halfpenny coins issued for general use. While some were struck in 1970, they were not intended for circulation. The halfpenny, along with the rest of the pre-decimal coinage system, was demonetized on February 15, 1971, a date known as Decimal Day, when the UK officially transitioned to a simpler monetary system based on 100 pence to the pound. Following decimalization, a new decimal halfpenny was introduced but was smaller and had a different design. It too was unpopular and was eventually withdrawn in 1984. As a result, the 1967 pre-decimal halfpenny stands as one of the last vestiges of Britain's historic coinage system and remains a physical reminder of how money, values, and daily life have evolved over time. Legacy and cultural significance. Though no longer in circulation, the 1967 halfpenny has a lasting place in British cultural and economic history. Top 3. The 1960 Elizabeth II halfpenny coin, including its historical background, design details, technical specifications, minting information, collector value, and more. The information is structured in rich, descriptive paragraphs to provide a thorough understanding of this classic British coin. Historical context of the 1960 Elizabeth II halfpenny. The 1960 Elizabeth II halfpenny coin occupies a significant place in the history of British pre-decimal coinage. At that time, the United Kingdom still operated under the ancient pound-SD monetary system, in which £1 was divided into 20 shillings and each shilling into 12 pence, making 240 pence in total. The halfpenny, or 1/2d, was the smallest of the bronze denominations used widely for everyday purchases such as sweets, newspapers, and small household items. The 1960 issue represents part of the early coinage series of Queen Elizabeth II, who had only been on the throne for 8 years following the death of her father, King George VI, in 1952. It reflects a time of post-war rebuilding, modernization, and the slow decline of the British Empire abroad. By 1960, Britain was undergoing considerable social and economic change. The decade was marked by a growing consumer culture, technological innovation, and the gradual loosening of traditional social structures. Despite these developments, the monetary system still relied on coins like the halfpenny, which had been a cornerstone of British currency for centuries. Although the value of the coin was beginning to decline due to post-war inflation, it still retained practical purchasing power. The 1960 halfpenny circulated widely in shops, markets, and homes across the UK. It serves today as a symbolic artifact of a transitional period, one foot in the traditions of the 19th century and the other stepping toward the modern, decimalized world of the 1970s obverse design. Queen Elizabeth II's first portrait by Mary Gillick. The obverse, front side, of the 1960 halfpenny features the first official coin portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, created by the British sculptor Mary Gillick. This was the same portrait introduced in 1953 for the Queen's coronation and used on all UK coins during the first decade of her reign. The effigy shows the Queen facing right, wearing a laurel wreath rather than a royal crown, symbolizing peace, youth, and continuity. The choice of a wreath instead of a crown was a deliberate decision, meant to convey a more youthful, accessible image of the monarch, in contrast to the more formal and imperial portraits of previous reigns. The surrounding Latin inscription reads, Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina F. Laughing Face. This translates to, Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith. It is a traditional formula used on British coinage that ties the monarch to both divine authority and her role as Supreme Governor of the Church of England. Gillick's portrait is graceful, idealized, and classical in style, lending a sense of timelessness to the coin and making it one of the most recognizable images in 20th-century British numismatics. It also reflects the post-war optimism of the 1950s and the hope for a stable, prosperous second Elizabethan-era reverse design, the Golden Hind by Thomas Humphrey Paget. The reverse, backside, of the 1960 halfpenny features one of the most visually appealing and historically evocative designs ever used on British coinage, the Golden Hind, the famous 16th-century galleon captained by Sir Francis Drake during his voyage around the world from 1577 to 1580. The design was created by Thomas Humphrey Paget, one of the leading coin designers of the mid-20th century, known for his ability to bring historic themes to life with artistic accuracy and patriotic flair. The ship is shown in full sail, with remarkable attention to detail in the masts, sails, and rigging, as well as waves beneath the hull to suggest movement. Above the image is the denomination halfpenny, while the date, 1960, appears below the ship. The overall design celebrates Britain's naval heritage and global maritime power, themes which had long been part of British identity. The Golden Hind symbolized not only exploration and commerce, but also national pride and resilience. Although the British Empire was already in decline by the 1960s, this imagery served as a nostalgic reminder of the country's seafaring past and historical prominence on the world stage. Technical specifications and physical characteristics. The 1960 halfpenny was struck at the Royal Mint, which, during that era, was still operating in Tower Hill, London. Like other halfpennies of its time, it was made from bronze, a durable alloy consisting of 95.5% copper, 3% tin, and 1.5% zinc. This material gave the coin a rich reddish-brown color when freshly minted, although many examples have darkened with age and handling over the years. Here are the key specifications of the coin. Weight, 5.67 grams. Diameter, 25.48 millimeters. Thickness, approximately 1.6 millimeters. Edge, plain, smooth, no milling or inscription. Shape, round orientation. Metal alignment, obverse and reverse aligned. Despite its low face value, the coin had a relatively large size, which made it easy to identify by touch or sight, especially important in an age before widespread electronic transactions. Its durability meant that many coins from this era remained in circulation well into the 1970s, even after decimalization, mintage, and rarity. The 1960 halfpenny was produced in relatively large numbers to meet the needs of the British public. Over 63,676,400 coins were minted that year for general circulation. As such, the coin is not considered rare in the numismatic community. It remains readily available on the collector market, particularly in circulated grades. However, coins in mint state, uncirculated or brilliant uncirculated condition, are somewhat less common, as most coins were used in daily commerce and show signs of wear. Uncirculated examples may have been preserved in rolls, sets, or collections, and are of interest to both beginner and advanced collectors. A proof version was not officially struck for the 1960 halfpenny, as proof sets were only issued in selected years. Collector value and market prices. Due to its high mintage and relatively recent issue date, the 1960 halfpenny has limited monetary value in today's collector market. In circulated condition, most coins are worth between 5 pence and 25 pence, depending on their state of preservation. In uncirculated or near uncirculated condition, prices can range from 50 pence to £2, especially if the coin shows its original bronze luster and has no major blemishes. Despite its modest value, the coin has considerable educational and historical appeal. It is a common choice for beginner coin collectors, school projects or history displays, royal memorabilia collections, jewelry and craft items, due to the attractive golden hind design. Collectors looking for a full set of Elizabeth II halfpennies often include the 1960 issue, along with earlier coins from 1953 to 1959 and later issues up to 1967. Withdrawal and decimalization. The 1960 halfpenny continued to circulate throughout the 1960s, although the demand for small denominations was gradually declining. The pre-decimal monetary system was becoming increasingly inefficient and confusing, especially to tourists and younger generations. This led to the Decimalization Act of 1969, which reformed British currency and set the stage for Decimal Day on February 15, 1971. Top 4. The 1958 Elizabeth II halfpenny coin, covering its historical background, design features, technical specifications, mintage, numismatic value, and cultural significance. This has been structured into extended, informative paragraphs for a deep understanding of this classic British coin historical context of the 1958 Elizabeth II halfpenny. The 1958 Elizabeth II halfpenny is part of the pre-decimal coinage of the United Kingdom, a currency system that was in place for centuries before Britain officially decimalized its coinage in 1971. At the time, the pound sterling was divided into 240 pence, with 12 pence making a shilling and 20 shillings to the pound. The halfpenny, also written as 1/2d or halfpenny, was the lowest value bronze coin, yet it served an essential function in daily life, used to buy newspapers, sweets, bus rides, and other low-cost items. Even though it had a small value, its purchasing power was still significant to the average British citizen, especially during the post-war recovery period in 1958. The United Kingdom was still adjusting to life after World War II. Though rationing had ended a few years earlier, the economy was still recovering, and the British Empire was transitioning into the Commonwealth. This was also just 6 years after the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II, a young monarch who had taken the throne in 1952 following the death of her father, King George VI. The issuance of coins with her likeness marked a fresh start for Britain, symbolizing not only a new era of royal leadership but also national renewal. The 1958 halfpenny is an example of this new chapter, blending traditional design elements with the youthful image of the Queen, capturing the sentiment of the age, a mix of nostalgia, resilience, and modernity. Obverse design. Queen Elizabeth II by Mary Gillick. The obverse, front, of the 1958 halfpenny features the first official portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, sculpted by Mary Gillick, a highly regarded British artist and medalist. This effigy shows the Queen in a right-facing profile, crowned not with a diadem or the traditional St. Edward's crown, but adorned instead with a laurel wreath. The decision to portray her in this classical style, echoing ancient Roman figures, was intentional. It signified youth, virtue, and continuity, moving away from the more rigid, formal portraits of past monarchs. The portrait is dignified, graceful, and modern for its time, giving the coin an elegant, timeless appearance. Surrounding the portrait is the traditional Latin Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina F laughing face. This translates to Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith. The inscription affirms the Queen's divinely ordained authority and her constitutional role as the head of the Church of England. This obverse was used on all British coins from 1953 to the mid-1960s and is beloved by numismatists for its artistic refinement and symbolism. The 1958 halfpenny thus carries both the image and ethos of a monarch at the beginning of what would become the longest reign in British history. Reverse design. The Golden Hind by Humphrey Paget. On the reverse, back, of the 1958 halfpenny is the image of the Golden Hind, the famous English galleon captained by Sir Francis Drake, who famously circumnavigated the globe between 1577 and 1580. This iconic design was created by Thomas Humphrey Paget, a master engraver who contributed to many British coinage designs throughout the mid-20th century. The image of the Golden Hind was first introduced in 1937 on the halfpenny during the reign of George VI and continued throughout the early Elizabethan coinage period due to its popularity and symbolic resonance. The ship is depicted in fine detail, sailing proudly on stylized ocean waves, with billowing sails and intricate rigging, a dynamic image that captures the maritime spirit of Britain. Above the ship is the denomination halfpenny, and below is the date of issue. 1958. The Golden Hind design is rich in historical symbolism. It not only evokes the Age of Discovery, during which England established its naval power, but also reflects Britain's imperial legacy, trade dominance, and seafaring heritage. Even as the empire was receding in the 1950s, the ship served as a romantic symbol of Britain's bold and adventurous past. Technical specifications and composition. The 1958 Elizabeth II halfpenny was struck at the Royal Mint, which at the time was still operating from its historical location at Tower Hill in London. Like other halfpennies of the period, it was made of bronze, which consisted of 95.5% copper, 3% tin, and 1.5% zinc. The coin was built for durability and longevity, and many examples remain in very good condition even after decades in circulation. Here are the full technical specifications. Mass: 5.67 grams diameter, 25.48 millimeters thickness, 1.6 millimeters edge, plain shape, round alignment. Metal, obverse and reverse images face the same direction when flipped vertically. Despite being of low face value, the coin had a substantial feel due to its size and weight. This was a practical design feature that helped distinguish it by touch, which was important in a time when people handled coins frequently without looking at them. The bronze composition gave it a reddish-brown appearance when new, though it often darkens to a deep brown or black tone as it ages. Mintage and availability. The mintage of the 1958 halfpenny was substantial, with approximately 52,872,000 coins struck for circulation. As such, the coin is not considered rare by numismatists and remains one of the more commonly found Elizabeth II halfpennies from the 1950s. Most of these coins circulated widely across the United Kingdom and remained in use well into the 1960s, and even after decimalization, many were kept as souvenirs. Because of its high mintage, it's relatively easy to find in old collections, coin boxes, and among inherited items. However, uncirculated or mint-state specimens, coins that were never used and retain their original shine and detail, are less common and more valuable to collectors. Proof versions of the 1958 halfpenny were not issued for public sale, making regular strikes the only available format. Collector value and market pricing. The 1958 Elizabeth II halfpenny, due to its high mintage and wide availability, generally carries low market value in circulated condition. A well-worn example might sell for between 5 pence and 20 pence. However, the value increases with condition in uncirculated or brilliant uncirculated condition, meaning the coin has no wear and retains its full mint luster. The coin might fetch between 50 pence and £2, depending on the collector market and seller. While it may not be worth a fortune, the 1958 halfpenny holds strong historical and nostalgic value. It's frequently included in educational kits, historical displays, royal memorabilia sets, or used in jewelry, such as pendants or cufflinks. Because of its attractive design, it's also a great entry-level coin for beginners in British numismatics, offering beauty and history without a high price tag. Withdrawal and decimalization. The halfpenny, like all pre-decimal coinage, was eventually withdrawn as part of the UK's transition to the decimal system, which occurred on February 15, 1971, known as Decimal Day. This major monetary reform was introduced to simplify transactions and align the UK with other decimalized economies. The old 1/2D had no equivalent in the new decimal system and thus was demonetized. Thanks for watching my videos. Please subscribe on my channel for more videos.